No, I know you, Jay.
Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of your Storybox podcast. Today, my friends, I'm delighted to welcome an Australian author icon, someone who I have known of for quite some time. Actually, she's been on my radar for a while. It's always good to be able to speak to Australians and Australian authors because I'm a huge book nerd, for those people that don't know. Her name is Toni Jordan. Now, for my Aussie audience, you would know who she is. If you love books, that is. But she has worked as a molecular biologist, believe it or not, quality control chemist, TAB operator, and door-to-door aluminium siding salesperson. So she's got a bit of a range here, and we'll add best-selling author to the list as well. She's the author of 5 novels. Many of you would know the International Bestseller edition, which was long listed for the Miles Franklin Award. And she has a brand new book out right now. I'm holding it up for people that are watching. Dinner with the Schnabels. I got it right. You can marry into them, but can you ever really be one of them? That's a great question. Toni, can I welcome you so much to the Storybox podcast today?
Jay, thank you so much for having me. It's just a delight.
It's honestly amazing to have you here. Now, I wanted to start off this conversation with a very, very unique, I guess, question for you.
I'm ready. I'm getting ready.
I want to read out your acknowledgement section. There's a bit here that I found curious. And I'm still grateful for April 30th, 1994. So 2 years before I was born, when I picked up a cute drunk guy at a party and took him home. Longest one night stand ever. Thank you, Robbie, for being the source of much of my chocolate, coffee, and happiness. Can you please tell me that story?
Well, Robbie is my husband, and we did meet. It was a one-night stand where I met him at a party, and I did wake up with him in the morning, and his name is Robert, and I was almost certain it was Rob, but maybe it was Rod. Like, it was really kind of a rushed thing. And then we just stayed together forever after that. So that was, as you say, I think coming up to 28 years ago, and still together now. We've been married for 20 years, and we met 28 years ago. So it was a strange meeting because I had never met him before that night. But I really he thinks he's a genius now because it was his idea that I write a novel in the first place. So I have to thank him in all my books.
We'll give him credit for taking you down this path. And
absolutely.
That is amazing. And
he thinks he's so clever now, Jay. He sits at home and he goes, next, rock star. Like, he's just joking. I can't sing for nuts. But like, he thinks now that he's this kind of brilliant ideas person who's going to come up with different things for me to do with my time.
Does he ever read your books before you officially send them to your actual editor?
He reads them when the first ARCs come out. So when the first sort of proof copies comes out, he gets the first proof copy, and he's not a reader. And, being read by someone who's not a reader, my dad's the same, not a reader, has never read any books other than mine. So they think I'm this incredible genius because they're just blown away by this thing called a book. And they go, my dad goes, how'd you do that, Tup? Like, I don't want to tell them about like Margaret Atwood and a whole lot of people who do it better than me. They think I'm just the most amazing writer in the world. So I'm just going to leave it that way.
Biased opinion of family, right?
That's right.
I think my family are like that with me doing podcasts and then me writing my very first book. My mum is a reader. So I allowed her to read my very first draft. And I was kind of very, very nervous to hear her response. And so when she came back with all this feedback and all her notes, I was like freaking out thinking this whole book is going to change considerably. And she's not going to think that I'm a great author now because she had to input a lot of the things.
Yeah. She read the early stuff.
Yeah. So what turned out, what was from a one night stand for you ended up turning into 20 years of marriage.
That's right.
What was it about, Robbie, that made you want to turn that one night stand into a long-lasting relationship?
It's a very strange thing, but it was love at first sight for me.
Wow.
I wouldn't have believed it was possible, but we were at a party and he took my hand and said, "How you going?" And I was like, from that moment on, I was like, okay, so this is the next 30 years of my life just planned out. Right, there we go. Let's get started. So, it was I wouldn't have believed that kind of thing was possible, but it very much was for me on that night.
That is a story. Okay. So you're going to also tell me, I want to backtrack a little bit. Before you met Robbie, what were you doing career-wise? Where were you in that stage of your life? What were you doing?
Yep. So that was when I was a quality control chemist. So I worked for a big vitamin company and I ran their quality lab to test all the vitamin tablets to make sure they had in them what they said they did and would do the job that was on the label. So that was kind of my job. I'd already worked for a biotech company making this a special kind of enzyme, a restriction enzyme, it's called, that cuts DNA in certain spots. And I'd already worked in a research lab at the University of Queensland where I studied, where I looked at proteins in horse blood. So if you have any horse blood questions, Jay, just feel free, like I'm your girl. So I'd already done that and I'd worked for the biotech company making enzymes, and then I'd moved into quality control in a lab in a pharmaceutical company. So that was when I met him.
Was this all before you were a molecular biologist, or was that after?
Yeah, so this is all kind of, the work in the horse blood lab, that's kind of molecular biology, and the work in the biotech company, it's sort of all under this broad umbrella of molecular biology, but really protein chemistry is, I suppose, my subspecialty among that, under that umbrella label, which was a lot of fun, really so much fun.
So why did you decide to choose, I guess, molecular biology as a sort of a career path?
Well, I'm from a working class family. My job that you read out as a TAB operator was my first job in my mum's TAB. My mum had a TAB. When I was a kid, my dad was a greyhound trainer, so we had greyhounds under the house and we went to the races. Not a very, not an artistic or a family who did sort of cultural things. So I was the first of my generation to go to university, to have the ability to go to university. My dad ended up going back to university as a mature age student, but as a young person, I was the first one to go to university. And it's hard to envisage, when you're from a family where you're the first, a job that doesn't sound like a job, like doing arts. What does that mean? What do you do? How does that translate into a career path? Because the job thing is the career path, so you can get a job, so you can get a house, so you can get a mortgage, so you can have a family, like it's this straight line. So my mum really wanted me to do medicine. I really didn't. And in the end, I didn't get the grades anyway, so it was a moot point. But I always loved science. I love figuring stuff out and I love knowing how things work. And, a research scientist was the kind of job I could, my family could understand. You did this course and you got this job.
And so you never saw yourself being an author later on in your life?
I would have said, had you asked me this question in the early 2000s, I would have said categorically, I have not got an artistic bone in my body. I have never written anything. I have never painted anything or drawn anything or photography. I had no art on my walls. I had no friends in any. I read. I always read a lot of novels. But I would have thought, I knew people wrote them, right? Because they're objects. You can hold them in your hand. Someone does it. But they weren't people like me. They weren't people on the kind of back blocks of Brisbane with greyhounds underneath the house. Like that's just not how it worked.
So your PhD in creative arts, you found didn't really help you, or did it?
Well, that was very late. I just got that a couple of years ago. So that was kind of, I started that when I was about, I would say maybe 52, something like that. Because I just really love it now. As soon as I started writing, this is the problem. Maybe you're uncovering kind of an uncomfortable character trait, the love at first sight with my husband. As soon as I started writing fiction, like my very first attempt at writing fiction was I just couldn't stop once I started, and I just wanted to do it more and more and more. And that very first attempt at fiction grew into my first book edition.
Huh. And why? I guess the question is, what led you to starting, and why did you start?
And so now it loops back to my husband, who thinks he's the world's best career advisor. So after I left the job in the lab, I got a few other jobs, all for pharmaceutical companies, so marketing kind of roles. And in those roles, you had to have a really good understanding of science and the way these pharmaceutical products worked. So I kind of got a lot of work writing new chemical entity dossiers, and every time a pharmaceutical company wants to change a drug, they have to apply to the TGA. We understand all this now, or the FDA in some other countries. So because we've all had a crash course in drug approval, we're all, 10 years ago, no one knew what I was talking about. Now everyone knows what I'm talking about. So I wrote, drug dossiers to be handed into the TGA and the FDA in other countries. And as you know now, I'm not so much a morning person, and I just didn't like this, going into the office, sitting at my little desk caper. And Robbie came up with two brilliant ideas. The first was, if I get a TAFE qualification in writing, in professional writing, technical writing and scientific writing, I could set up my own business as a technical writer from home, and kind of have a bit more agency over the work I was doing and how I managed it, because I had a lot of contacts by then in science. And I thought this was a great idea. I could do like a TAFE diploma in professional writing, and then I would have something to say to people. Not only did I have all this experience, but I also was qualified in writing. And so I'm enrolling in this course, right? I'm sitting at the kitchen table ticking off all my serious subjects, because I'm quite a serious person. And Robbie says, you know how you love reading novels? You know how reading novels is your favorite thing in the world? Yes. Why don't you pick one of the creative subjects that this course also offers, just kind of for the fun of it? Because it was one of those courses that had, technical nonfiction, very serious writing subjects, but also had poetry and playwriting and all these things I'd never really thought about. So I thought, okay, I never, I'll do something. So I ticked a little box that said writing a novel, and I started writing a novel, and that novel became Edition, my first novel, that went on to, I think, be published in 17 countries and translated into 16 languages. So it's continually, I'm genuinely an accidental novelist, Jay, genuinely.
Wow. There's a lot of history. So ridiculous. There's a lot of history there, I think, is honestly amazing. How you went from all these different jobs and then became a published author, and that book just went absolutely crazy. And now you've written 4 other books as well in the mix, which is pretty cool. I mean,
so hilarious. Sometimes last time I was in Brisbane, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I ran into an old friend of mine that I used to work with in science, and we worked in a lab together, and she said to me, "It's so funny, you've got the same name as that writer." It's just such a foreign concept that would be me.
I mean, when you were writing your very first book, what was the process like for you in terms of actually coming up with the story, the plot, the themes, all that sort of stuff? And has that initial process for you writing your very first book, has that changed over the years as you've written many different books?
Well, you have talked to a lot of writers in your time. So you we'll probably already have this concept of planners and pantsers, right? So in case anyone doesn't, we can broadly, extremely rough, this is extremely rough kind of dissection of novelists into planners who plan out their work in advance and have sensible answers to all that question you just asked, Jay. Or there are pantsers who make things up by the seat of their pants as they go. And I am firmly a pantser. I can't envisage doing it any other way. I never know what I'm going to do from one day to the next when I sit down. So that process has not changed. So when I started writing my first book edition, I started at the first, what I imagined would be the first paragraph, and I kept going until I got to the end. And that's how I still do it now, with very little forethought. But as soon as, I've learned, I have attempted to plan things out, because a number of my friends are very planning orientated people, and there is a scientific side of my brain that loves to put things in order, but it never works. It becomes forced and didactic and cardboardy people moving around. There's something about making it up as I go that keeps it kind of fresh and alive, I think.
I'm the same way. I mean, I tried planning, but then I guess my brain just wouldn't compute with what I was planning. And then when I started writing, I didn't even go off anything that I had pre-planned. So I'm like, I'm going to bin this and then just go from, I guess, where I am, where my brain is going to take it. I have no idea where that is. And if it's verbal vomit to start off with, then at least I've got it all out on the page, what was in my brain, and then I can go back over it later on and then try and piece it all together and have it make sense. Because it makes sense 100%. Up here.
Yeah,
100%. It's just like, what the heck was that?
I completely relate to everything that you just said. It's exactly the same for me. I just need to trust in, need to get out of my own way. That's the thing that stuffs me up, is when I overthink things. I'm a chronic overthinker. And if I move fast and I write quickly and I try to, I keep a very close look at word counts, but not because I think that matters. I think that just gives me the front of my brain stuff to do, so it can just occupy itself while the unconscious mind kind of does the hard work, the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
I do the same thing. Like, I'll just write, and then I'll in the forefront of my mind, I'll have my thoughts on the page as I'm writing. And then in the back of my mind, I'll have the word count just I'll have it on the bottom, and I'll continue watching it as it goes up. And I kind of feel like a sense of accomplishment if I go even higher. It's like, I've done something, I've written something down.
Yeah, but this is important, because part of the challenge of writing, a substantial piece of work, like when I handed in first draft of Dinner with the Schnabels, it was like 92,000 words. Like, that's a very massive piece of work. And part of the skill set you've got to learn is managing your own mindset, because it's running a mental marathon, an intellectual marathon. And it's very easy to get frustrated, because every time you sit down, you're only doing the smallest amount of it. And you've got to learn techniques to unhook yourself from the end product and think about, today my job is to write the best, 1,000 words or whatever that I can do. That's my job today, the best 1,000 words, and let go of all those other things, because it just does your head in, right? You can't manage your frame of mind if you're thinking ahead too much, I think.
So what inspires you, Toni, with coming up with these kinds of ideas for books? I mean, I guess the best place to start with would be, what inspired you to write Dinner with the Schnabels?
Well, look, I knew that I wanted to write a comedy, and because I just think we need a comedy right now. day.
Yep, after everything.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I've seen this myself in the stuff I've been streaming over the last couple of years. Of course, I've done a lot of streaming like we all have over the last couple of years. But I found myself watching things like Schitt's Creek and Ted Lasso and things that are warm and have a lot of heart, and things that were, people doing the wrong things and getting everything wrong, but for the right reasons, if you know what I mean. So I knew I wanted to write a comedy. And that's a scary thing for me, because as soon as you say it's a comedy, which you have to say at some point on the jacket or somewhere, you immediately will have someone say, I didn't find it funny. So making that stamp of saying it's a comedy is to me quite a commitment because, humor is extremely individual. And, there are things that I find funny that other people don't. And, it's a scary kind of decision to make. But once I made that, the rest of it kind of fell into place after that. I knew I wanted to make something that was a little bit of warmth and a little bit of joy, because I felt the timing for that would be good.
I completely agree with you with the kind of 2 years that we've had, especially in Melbourne, you poor woman. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this is a much needed book, and the concepts that you're telling about, family, love, marriage, all those things intertwined. I think we need a lighthearted approach with those things, because the family has been probably hit hard with a lot of people being stuck in lockdown and you name it. But did you have like any inspiration from real life to form these characters, to form the actual key story element?
I'm not really the kind of person who takes much from real life. I was the kind of kid who played a lot of Barbies, So when I was a little kid, I had on the far side of my bed this Barbie world kind of set up with furniture and families and kids and jobs, and every afternoon when I got home from school, when I was like 8, I would play this extended telenovela kind of, I think I was watching probably Dallas and Dynasty at that point, where people had fights with people and jobs and all these things kind of happened. So I quite like making up people. I like making up people in my head. It makes me, it's just a source of, the world is a ridiculous place. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's tragic but also stupid. And I really think that having an ability to laugh at ourselves and with other people it is kind of like a piece of mental self-care. It's like it gives you a resilience to keep going when things get tough. So I had the vibe I wanted to create, I guess, was the thing that I knew from the beginning of this story.
Is there a twist ending?
I'm not going to. There's a reveal. Maybe we could say there's a bit of a reveal. It's
so for those people,
not what you think.
I'm looking forward to finishing it, but I might ask you afterwards because I don't mind spoilers. But for those people that want to get a bit of a overarching sort of take on the book, what is this book really about?
Well, it's about one man. His name is Simon. He's had a bad couple of years, as many people have. He lost his business and he's unemployed, and he can't seem to get off the couch, and he lost his house. So he's struggling. He's not. This doesn't make it sound like a comedy, Jay, but I promise. I promise. He's having a hard time of it. But his in-laws, his wife's family, have got a plan, and that is that he should landscape a friend's garden for a family event, for a memorial service that they're holding. So he has 1 week to landscape a garden, which really should be well within his capabilities. But he's not at his best. He's continually derailed over the course of the week, so that the book lasts for 1 week, and things continually go wrong for him. And I've tried to put the kind of narrative energy into this will he not finish the garden question in the same way that people might be diffusing a nuclear bomb kind of pressure. So I'm trying to keep the tension high even though the stakes are low. So the question is, will Simon finish the garden by Saturday? And we'll see what happens.
And then he meets some interesting characters along the way, I believe.
Yeah. So things go wrong for him right from the very beginning. He gets an unexpected house guest. He gets calls from his old staff, which he thought, and then one of the kids is in trouble at school, and everything about modern life. It's often not the big things that defeat you; it's the little things that can defeat you. So his fridge breaks down, so he's got to, he's broke. He's got to somehow pay for a fridge repair, and he's got to wait around all day for the guy to come and fix the fridge. So this should not be a big thing in the scheme of things. But when it happens, it really is a big thing. So it's just kind of the tension building up from all these little things that kind of interrupt his week.
All those little things that seemingly frustrate men. I know for a fact.
Absolutely.
The bathroom, one of the handles, we're in the process of trying to sell a house at the moment and moving to Queensland, the sunny coast. And this morning I'm in the bathroom and I pull the drawer handle and the handle breaks. I'm like, damn it. But you're right. There are those, like, if you're already starting out and you're having a bad day or life's not really going your way, those compiling little things just end up with a massive explosion. And it's not good.
It's so weird. Like, the human brain is so weird. So we have to deal with, at the same time, the existential dread that comes from the knowledge that one day we will die and cease to exist, and the handle breaking on the bathroom drawer. And it's like, in our brain, we almost give those two things equal weight when logically, they're not really of equal weight. But it's these small things that can kind of derail you. So poor Simon is dealing with very big issues about the nature of his marriage and what he wants to do with his life, and he's a bit depressed and how he sees the world, how he can adapt to a new and ever-changing world, and he's also got the broken fridge. So it's kind of balancing these these issues for him.
Now we can see the humor. So we're laughing at the poor guy's pain and then relating it to life.
That's right. I'm hoping people recognize, some of the things that he has to deal with.
It's very much Australian, I find. You got that Australian humor intertwined throughout it, because I think my parents, when we've had something break or it ends up, we make what's that saying? We make the molehill one.
Yeah,
make a mountain out of a molehill, that thing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what it is, we just over amplify it in the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't have time to fix this damn drawer that's broken and I don't have the money for this. But if you look at the Americans, right, comparing it to them, they're just like, oh, she'll be right. It's all good. I mean, we're Australians and we came up with a she'll be right attitude. Right. And it's not right. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
I know exactly what you mean. Things are a bit out of balance. When you're having a hard time, things get out of balance. I know exactly what you mean.
So what are some of the key lessons that you intertwined throughout this book?
I think, it's funny that it's a theme that I keep coming back to. My first book was sort of about that as well, which is all we really have is the present moment, trying to live in the present moment. And instead, I read a lot of I read a lot from the Stoic philosophers. Instead, we live in the past, or we borrow our, I think, was it Seneca who said we borrow our problems from the future, when really just think about, it's quite enough to think about right now and how you can fix right now, and to give a kind of an order of priorities to things. But really, it's really not the kind of book that's loaded with lessons. If it makes people smile, that's really all I'm asking for, because I firmly believe in the power of humor to really to make your life better. There's a lot of people in the world who have a business model based on making people miserable. Because if you're miserable, then you've got to go out and like buy a new lipstick or a dress, or like a lot of the consumer culture we live in is resting on people being unhappy enough to have to spend money to cheer themselves up. So you can, buy a book and share it with 10 of your friends, and it costs you like $3, or you can get it from a library, or you can spend almost just nothing and you can change your state within your own power. And to me, that is, fiction is, books in general are just the most miraculous thing. They contain entire worlds, and you will be changed when you come out the other end in whatever way it is. And you can access them. You can keep your own copy. I hope some people do, otherwise I can't pay my own bills. But if you don't have the money, you can go to the library. Like, nothing is stopping you. It's just, and the same way, as I said at the beginning, I started writing a novel through a creative writing course. So I'm an enormous believer in doing courses for things like this, but you don't have to. You don't need, a potting wheel or a easel or expensive oils. You need a pen and paper, and you can start writing today. You can start writing something about your life to pass on to somebody else. You can start capturing memories that are important to you. You can start making a story that reflects some important truth that you've learned about things. It's the most democratic art form, not only as a reader, but as a writer. And I'm still excited about it nearly 20 years later.
You're super wise. And I can relate to a lot of the things you just said, because I wasn't good in school. I wasn't great with many subjects, but the one subject that I honestly to God loved the most was the creative writing part of English, because that meant that I could let my brain run wild with just sitting down with me, the paper, and it helped me transport myself out of the real world into this imaginary world that kind of helped control my emotions in the real world. It's like this amazing phenomenon that goes on. And in school, in primary and in high school, because I was bullied, I would just go to books and I would read books. So that would be kind of like my escape almost. Yep. I would read stories. For the life of me, Toni, I can't find these books that I used to read as a kid. They were like these adventure. They had dragons in them. They had soldiers. They had all this stuff. I can't remember for the life of me the name, but if I could see the front cover, I guarantee I'd be able to remember it. But I just can't remember the name of the books. I'm like, I've been looking for ages. I found them in a library one day because we couldn't really afford many books. And these days, when I can't afford books, I can't find the books that I used to love. So I wanted to get it for more of my own personal gratification.
Of course.
But yeah, like you were saying, I think humor, just being able to put a smile on someone's face, I mean, that just helps you. It uplifts you as much as the other person. So I love how you're doing that with writing. I cannot wait to finish this book now. You're making me. But
also, can I just say one other thing about that point that you just made about imagination? So often I have a book. My novel 9 Days is on the VCE English list here in Victoria. So kids study it in school, right? And so I often go and speak to like school kids, year 12 kids, and they often have this idea that I've moved from science, they know that, into creative writing, into fiction. So now I'm in a field where imagination and creativity matters, but I wasn't before. And something that I say to them all the time is everything relies on creativity, every single thing. In the sciences, you can't test something, design an experiment to test something, unless you already have imagined what the solution to a problem might be. And the only way we're ever going to make a better world is if we can envisage one, is if we can imagine what something will be like. So this skill of imagination and creativity is, to my mind, the single most important skill that anybody can learn, and especially young people can learn. And it comes from, as you said, letting your imagination off the leash, right? So you can actually, it doesn't matter, it's mental, like it's wildly imaginative, absolutely impossible. None of that matters. What matters is you're making something from nothing, something that wasn't there before, an idea in your head or on a piece of paper that wasn't there before. And this is an exercise for you to start honing these imagination and creativity skills, and they're the skills that everybody needs.
You said it. Honestly, I think it's being curiously creative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just letting your mind run wild. And I think science as well, that a lot of people miss, is the ability to question things. And if you do want to make the world a better place, you got to question what was old and hopefully find something that is new that can be improved. I mean, absolutely. I think everything can be improved, right? It's just
absolutely.
It's up to that creative aspect on which section needs to be improved, or the overarching thing, changing it, different perspectives, you name it. But I just love the whole creative process of writing. I find it incredibly challenging, but also really rewarding at the same time. And if people are listening to this and you've never written a book before, I think Toni can relate to this as well. It's downright hard, but when you get to the end, it's like this rewarding relief. It's like, I just did that, right? Like it is
an incredible achievement.
It is. It really is. So, yeah. I'm so grateful for your work, Toni, and for your ability to help a lot of other people in this space, I guess, unleash that creative itch that maybe people are hiding away.
Don't hide it away. Don't hide it away. Especially, if you're a mature person, your stories need to stay in your family, right? You need to pass them on. So you need to get something down on paper because people forget. So, if you're young, you need to practice your imagination skills. If you're not so young, you need to capture these amazing experiences that you've lived through. Like, don't let them go to waste. Nobody has the perspective that you have. And if you let these stories go, they're gone for good.
Yeah. Great point to make there. Where do you want people to get a copy of your brand new book, Toni?
It's available in your local independent bookstore across the country, and in other bookstores as well. And it should be, hopefully you can find it anywhere.
Well, when I walk into my local Dimmicks, hopefully today, if you can find it, I'll take a photo of it and I'll share it. I love going into bookstores and then seeing all my friends that have written books on display. And then if they are hidden away somewhere, I'll pick them up and put them out where everyone can see them. That's me.
You're a guerrilla. It's a guerrilla out facer. So you sneak into the store and you move them so that they're facing out. Excellent. Good job.
I'm one of those people. Okay. So I'm your biggest supporter, biggest fan. But two quick final questions for you, Toni, if you don't mind. What do you love the most about yourself and your story?
Okay. What do I love about myself? The thing I love about myself is I really try at everything. Like, I never phone it in. I give everything the absolute. I can go to bed every night going, I left nothing on the table and I just gave it everything. I'm happy about that, about myself. And my story, as opposed to the book story, I'm. Oh, gee, that's a bit. That's a tricky question. I've experienced. I've had the most amazing life. I've met the most amazing people. Been to the most amazing places. I've just been so lucky. Let's say that. I've very grateful that I've had this lucky life.
I love all that. This is my all-time favorite question. I love asking all my guests at the very end. It is a hypothetical one, but I want you to imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together not a book, but a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how in the world they got it all.
The technology will exist, right?
It will probably, but just imagine they got it all and they've been able to show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
Just how lucky I was. Like, you know, was it Prince who said, life is just a party and parties aren't meant to last?
Yeah.
I just think it will show that I've just had, I've been incredibly lucky and I've had a marvelous time, and I'm so grateful for that.
Perfect send-off message for people to be left with. Toni Jordan, thank you so much for your time today, for your story, for writing these incredible other stories as well for us. Go and get a copy of her brand new book, Dinner with the Schnabels. I'm getting it right this time. It's Schnabels. But thank you so much, Toni, for joining me today on the Storybox podcast.
Such a pleasure, Jay. Thank you so much for asking me.